A frighteningly ominous opening 3 shots, each shot bringing us closer and closer, each shot a descent. Even the fade between shots 2 and 3 descends from top to bottom of the frame. The next shots, each in its way uncanny, a hole in the middle of an elevator door, an elevator operator clutching a bulging businessman's briefcase, a man splayed jaggedly on the floor, dead cold, the elevator door closing on the dead man, and the extremely matter-of-fact, disembodied voiceover giving us the facts, just the facts that matter. Gruesome facts about a murder, a $300,000 robbery, a disappearance still unsolved, still dangling in the air. The abrupt yet cross-country and year-collapsing fade from New York City nighttime to urban Los Angeles nighttime also jars. The movie's titles, occurring not before but after the film begins and continually rolling over the movie's further action, also unnerves us, as does the further ironic oddity of a cardboard dummy advertising suntan lotion accidentally falling against the pharmacy's display window, catching the eye of an off-duty police detective in the late night. And an eye-level camera riveted on the officer, giving the pharmacy's exterior the once-over, all along the drugstore's front, then along its side, to its alley behind, where the back door of the pharmacy is located. Also unsettling is the alley, drenched in inky black except for pools of light here and there, as well as the light that will eventually be taken from us, turning the frame into almost pitch darkness. When the detective wonders about a car oddly parked in the middle of an alley, and the detective proceeds to open the vehicle that oddly is unlocked, and from the ignition takes the keys that are oddly still dangling there, and then opens the back door of the pharmacy because the lock in the door frame's hasp oddly is open. All these unusual events make us, like the cop, surprised, puzzled, cautious, and above all, uneasy. Another ironic oddity, a piano softly tinkling a mellow romantic tune. Is it underscoring, part of the credit score, or is it source music, and if so, where is the source? And then a series of nerve-rattling occurrences, a back door cautiously opening from the outside in, a cop bending at the waist and knees, brandishing a gun, a pharmacist on the floor with tied ankles and hands and a gagged mouth attempting to signal with his head. A drugstore full of shadows and light and silence. The cop's leg bumping into a toy Mack truck that plows into a toy fire engine, setting off a blaring fire alarm, stopped by someone else's foot, someone who has a gun pointing. The cop sheltering behind, ironically, an ice cream container. The man signals, but to whom? A second man, gun hand, coming out of an anteroom. The cop crawling out, an endless wait fraught with expectations, questions, stress, silence. 3 figures, each frozen, with guns pointing. The first man popping up, signaling again. The cop aims his gun at him. The other man, still unbeknownst to the cop, taking aim with his gun that he blasts, that starts a volley of gunshots. The second man keels over, shot, perhaps dead. A brawl that is as endless as it is violent, punching, choking. At one point in the brawl, the cop's heel nicks the suspect's chin. At another point in the brawl, the suspect twists the cop's neck. a gun on the floor for grabs. Glass shattering. Display cases come smashing down, breaking apart. Climaxed by a spill through the pharmacy's display window involving once again the cardboard dummy. The scene ironically and symmetrically ending where it began, on the sidewalk. And to an alarm cutting through the night. Appreciate the sharp sound transition that takes us from the alarm going off in the street at the end of one scene to a phone ringing on the desktop in a police station at the start of another scene. Whew. How do you do? I'm Drew Casper, the Alma and Alfred Hitchcock Professor of American Film at the University of Southern California School of the Cinematic Arts, and I will be at your side as you make your way through this tough and rough, stark and dank movie by director Don Siegel. Participating in a Siegel movie, for me, is nothing less than a workout. Why didn't you and I just go through that in the first 6 minutes of this film? One side of Siegel's canvas is strewn with policeman protagonists. Of some 36 movies directed between his first, The Verdict in 1946, to his last, Jinx in 1982, 16 or so have dealt with lawmen of one sort or another, and the upholding of the law. City cops mostly, as here, but sheriffs, government agents, a criminal lawyer, a social worker. Also, 3 have dealt with soldiers during wartime fighting the enemy. One film features a mercenary. The other side of Siegel's canvas is strewn with criminals, those who have fractured the law and continue to do so. There have been 8 or so of these. Often Siegel has focused on a pair who work together, either instilling the law, as with Count the Hours, 1953, Madigan, 1968, or Cochran's Bluff, 1969, or Dirty Harry, 1971. Or here, with Sergeant Jack Farnham, who has answered the call, and Sergeant Cal Brunner, who apprehended the robber. Or Siegel's canvas focuses on a pair who obfuscate the law, as with The Killers in 1964. In the case of The Lineup, 1958, we have a movie that alternates 2 San Francisco detectives with 2 hired killers. Not to be a killjoy, in case this is your first time through this movie, we might make this very claim for the situation in Private Hell 36. Siegel's cops are complexly real, physically and psychologically, either ruggedly attractive as here or with passable ordinary looks. Shaky but strong, at times bruised, hurting, beaten, but holding it together. Pressured, problemed, uncertain, but pushing on. They are not superheroes in any sense of that word. This routine booking scene is raised to the not-so-routine as Siegel plays the pathos of the report of fellow cop Bowman being killed in the line of duty against the silly antics of the apprehended robber wanting a doctor for his stomach cramps. In the locker room, Siegel vividly defines his duo. Though professionally united, their respective personalities are at odds. Cal is concerned only with his appearance. He is totally absorbed with himself. He's combing his hair as the scene begins. He's quite upset that the suit he bought yesterday has been ripped. On the other hand, Jack can't help thinking about Bowman's untimely end. Yesterday, he told me he made his last car payment. On the other hand, Cal wants to know what Jack thinks of his new cologne, gotten wholesale because he's a cop. The first note of Cal's opportunistic venality. As for Bowman's death, well, to Jack, it's all in the line's work. And Bowman just got a little careless. Jack worries what would happen to his own wife and child if anything happened to him. At the mention of Bowman's funeral, Cal says he'll wear his gray suit, a new one. Jack's wry sense of humor kicks in as he tells Cal the corpse will love that. Cal is obtuse. He just doesn't get it. Indirectly addressing their personal differences, Jack asks, "Why do we go steady?" Cal pays him no mind, "Because I'm irresistible." Finally, remembering his foil date, Cal wonders what his excuse will be. "Tell her you're sorry, but you had to shoot a man. If she loves you, she'll understand." A hilariously droll retort from Jack that elicits not even a smidgen of a smile from Cal. Siegel's 36 years as a Hollywood director falls into two parts. The B film and TV phase, from beginnings to 1967's Strangers on the Run, and the second A film tier, beginning with 1968's Madigan. Incidentally, the credits rolling sometime after the film's opening and over the action is a TV technique used to nab the viewer from the start. As such, it was part of Siegel's box of tools. In the first part of his work, Siegel didn't work with stars, but rather solid, competent actors, some who had already had their day in the sun, others on their way. Steve Cochran plays Sergeant Cal Brunner, who's 37 years old here. After the University of Wyoming and working as a cowboy, he did some local theater, even appearing on Broadway. Seeing him in a touring company of Without Love, the prestigious independent producer Sam Goldwyn took him on. That was in 1945, because Goldwyn needed a heavy for his Danny Kaye romps. Also, Cochran's tall, dark, good looks took to Technicolor. It was a 3-year stint for Goldwyn. Back on Broadway, as Mae West's hunky paramour in a revival of Diamond Lil, Hollywood was interested again. Scary as a disgruntled gangster pussyfooting with boss James Cagney's blonde mole, the lascivious Virginia Mayo, in a knockout White Heat in 1949, got Cochran a Warner Brothers contract. Here his leads in B films and supports in A's as a menacing, disgruntled, corrupt, but easy on the eyes force came smashingly through. By 1953, he was working as an independent actor, and here as Cal, we find him in one of his finest post-Warner's roles. A classic example of one of Siegel's major concerns, moral decay taking root in basically good people. Howard Duff plays Captain Jack Farnham. Acting in high school and Seattle's local stages led to a role in the popular radio serial Adventures of Sam Spade from 1946 to 1950. This was Duff's ticket to the movies and TV. A 7-year Universal contract yielded some meaty roles, none more memorable than as a cop in The Naked City, 1948. It was in Woman in Hiding in 1950 that marked the first of 4 films with his future wife, Ida Lupino, whom he would marry in 1951. This film, in which he's 41 years old, was his second Lupino. Convincingly, Duff supplies another Siegel concern in his movies, a moral dilemma pulling a good cop apart, physically and psychologically. That this should happen to a 6-foot strapping, roughly attractive man with a wife and child makes the portrait even more harrowing. Dean Jagger, 51 now, is the doyen of solid supports in both A and B films in which he played both good and bad man, usually an authority figure. In Siegel's cop canvas, there usually was a leader, a captain marshal, no longer manning the streets but a desk, seasoned but not always on the up and up. Jagger's role here seems a reprise of his Oscar support performance in 12 O'Clock High in 1949, as a major tied to his desk job, too old to serve at the front in World War II, though he did in the last war, who is our way in and out of the film, while supplying critical moments in the plot. Here, Jagger's the voice-over at the film's beginning and end, and gets the unsolved mystery back on the burner, as we just saw. As a kid back on the Ohio farm, Jagger practiced oratory to an audience of animals, then trekked to Chicago's Lyceum Art Conservatory to study acting. After some stage bits, starting in 1925, he made his first film debut 4 years later. His lead role in Brigham Young in 1941 was his movie breakthrough in a 96 film career. Director Siegel, besides giving us a cop's public side, his Beat, with its attendant dangers, never neglects the private side, his at-home space and time, as here, in Jack's modest suburban home with his wife and child. The life of a cop, Siegel notes, takes its toll on his family as well. Jack's wife, Francie, is wide awake at 3:30 in the morning, waiting for her man to come home. Having heard about Bowman's death, she begs her husband to find another job or work in a safer division. She too frets about what would happen if. Notice the intimacy of this scene. in the bedroom with both actors' entire bodies, including their legs, in one and the same bed, not twin beds. The production codes, no two bodies from head to toe in one and the same bed, be damned. Dorothy Malone quite empathetically plays the fretting wife. She's almost 30 years old here. Her modeling and college dramatics made a talent scout give her the once-over, carting her off to RKO, where she did her first supporting role in 1943. RKO didn't renew her contract, but Warner's gave her one. After 5 years of supports at Warner's from 1944 to 1949, she began freelancing that included TV as well. Her all-American good girl and devoted wife type, as here, were essentially jettisoned in 1956 for Written on the Wind, as an alcoholic, nymphomaniacal, spoiled daughter of a rich Texas oil baron, now sporting platinum blonde hair, a curvaceous figure, and a Best Support Academy Award. The lack of a counterpart scene for Cal is obvious. He just doesn't have a private life, not yet. Siegel is about to bring on the fifth and last cog in the movie's wheel, Ida Lupino, who carries a heavy load both inside and outside the film. Inside, well, she's the character Lily Marlowe, the next link after the pharmacy holdup in this robbery, murder, disappearance mystery, picking up the momentum of the search, and soon to be a reluctant participant in its investigation. Also, she is one of the causes of the second mystery that is to happen upon the heels of the satisfactory conclusion of the first mystery. She also becomes the private side of Detective Cal, equally and complexly for better or for worse, as we shall see. And we already know Siegel is a stickler for taking up not only the public but private side of the cops, another example of symmetry. We see Jack and Cal on the job, and in the last scene, Jack's home life has been inlaid. Now, Siegel will begin to focus on Cal's private side. Lupino is one terrific actress. Incidentally, I've never come across a moviegoer who doesn't cotton to her on the screen. Her steely, determined, wisecracking, tough woman who's been around the block not once but a dozen times and has survived, who may or may not have a smidgen of sentiment way down deep, whose remarks are not only cut to the bone but hit as well. That this combination sent out sparks is no surprise. Compact at 5 feet 4 inches with a banked fire in her eyes, she has a throaty, deep voice. Her persona matched one of Siegel's female blueprints to a T. In her many films she played, as here, a club singer, memorably in The Man I Love in 1947, and with even more panache, Roadhouse, 1948. And not much of a singer at that. She continually puffed away at one cigarette after another, both in and out of the club spotlight, making with those droll afterthoughts and barbed asides. London-born into a theatrical family, she went into acting, even attending London's prestigious Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts to please her father. Actually, Lupino wanted to be a writer. Her first British film was 1931. 2 years later, Paramount brought her to Hollywood. Only in 1939, in the movie The Light That Failed, as a brazen model tormenting a blind painter, played by nice guy Ronald Colman, did she get noticed. And Warner's did most of the noticing. Signing her up, she rightly claimed that the studio saw her as a poor man's Bette Davis. Giving her the parts, Betty refused. At Warner's, it was her conniving, murdering, lying wife who becomes completely bonkers on the witness stand during a court trial in They Drive by Night in 1940. That sent audiences raving as she stole the show from the likes of Warner Brothers luminaries Humphrey Bogart, George Raft, and Ann Sheridan. Very Lupino-esque, she turned down scripts at Warner Brothers, and though she did do, she began rewriting, much to Jack Warner's ire. Eventually, after a Warner Brothers adieu, she began to don additional caps, moving into writing as well as producing and directing, by co-forming, along with her then husband Collier Young, her own independent unit called the Filmmakers Company. And so we come to Lupino's other tasks on this film, though on the other side of the camera. Here she wears two hats, those of co-producer and co-scripter, both along with Collier Young. And her talent as writer, as this film demonstrates, matches her acting skill. It didn't take a lot of brains to know that independent production was the way to go in post-war Hollywood, those years between 1946 and 62. Product had declined from the majors, who were also consolidating their studios. Studios had dropped off their exhibition wing as their concession to the government's indictment of the outfits as illegal cartels. So the studio reversed their former policy of keeping out independents. Now they welcomed them, and independent production was the way to go. Venues or movie houses were now available, and a producer, a star, a director, and a writer turned independent, itching for a creative say and more money. Yes, studios still produced and distributed their own product, both A's and B's, but also more and more took on independent films, financing them in whole or in part for a return with interest of their money loaned and certainly a distributor's fee. The Filmmakers Company began using RKO as a distributor until the studios collapsed and then began to distribute its product themselves, as with Private Hell 36. Not only is the Emerald Bar scene about the next connection in the mystery and the introduction of Lily's character and the setting up of Cal's private side, but Siegel is shading in Cal's opportunistic bent by picking up Lily's cigarette holder from the tavern floor and pocketing it, keeping the deed from his partner. This action is also a bridge to the next scene where again Cal's taking advantage of a situation is on display. Cal's pretext of returning the lost cigarette holder smooths over his unprofessional and perhaps transgressive visit to Lily's apartment. After all, please note, Jack does not accompany him. Cal's actions are of a piece, as with the cologne he got wholesale because he's a cop. Remember that? The Filmmakers Company could only afford to do low-budget B films. Lupino continued to work in and on her own films while taking acting jobs in films of others and doing TV to help finance her indie production company and its product. The company distinguished itself, first of all, by misspelling filmmakers, leaving one M out. If you missed it in the opening credits, you'll catch it again in the end credits. More saliently, though, the Filmmakers Company was special also in concentrating on realistic, socially conscious topics based on actual happenings that had an appeal to both males and females. Also, there had to be an emotional component to their product. For example, rape in Outrage in 1950, or simultaneous marriages in The Bigamist 1952. If the film called for a set, Lupino and Young reused sets from major studios, but they preferred locations, as with this film, to keep costs down, and besides, locations added to the realism of the look and the story as well. Lupino and Young also had no qualms about capitalizing on product placement either. In the interview at the Emerald Bar scene, you can help but notice the enlarged replicas of Pabst Blue Ribbon and other alcoholic products. Back in the pharmacy scene, there was an advertisement for Schlick razor blades and Tartan suntan oil. Not only contributing to the film's realism, Lupino and Young knew that audiences wouldn't mind, since TV was becoming the mass medium in the 50s, and the TV medium was fraught with commercials, so the audience was used to it. Lupino and Young emphasized pre-production to avoid technical glitches during the shooting, which invariably sent production costs up. Studio stars were not cast, but solid players were, invariably independents, Cochran, Malone, Jagger, who came cheaper. They also used friends, as here a husband, who offered a money break. And they hired no-nonsense, efficient directors and other craftsmen, talented people, more than not, on their way up, like director Don Siegel. The company was in business from 1949 to 1955. Lupino was one of the first females to man an independent company in Hollywood, and a director's chair as well. Incidentally, when she did direct, Lupino had pinned on the back of her director's chair, "Mother of Us All," and saw herself, in her own words, as a poor man's Don Siegel. Though A features took prominence, the production of B's was stepped up in post-war Hollywood. So the filmmakers' company was right on time, not only with its incorporation as a film production and distribution entity, but also in turning out B's. In fact, B movies underwent a budget upgrade from their former $400,000 or under level. At times, even their non-star casting was set aside. Even B's usual 1 to 4 week shooting schedule was lengthened, as was the running time to 90 minutes or over, though Private Hell 36 comes in at a brisk 81 minutes. The 1946 consent decree's ban on block booking made the B makeover possible. Every movie now, no distinction was made between A's and B's, had to be sold individually, on its own aesthetic and commercial merits, and hence competitively. Also, the market for B's was there. More than ever before, audience attrition due to TV diminished the run of an A film, thus making more available playing time on the nation's screens that B films could and did fill. A B film like Private Hell 36 soloed in first-run houses for a week's run when it opened September 3, 1954, returning a percentage of the house rental fee in lieu of the usual flat fee previously charged for B films. In small towns, where everyone can see an A film in 3 days, the need for a filler was even more acute. A considerable percentage of patrons in both urban and rural areas were attracted to genres typical of B production, like westerns and thrillers for oldsters, horror and sci-fi for youth. B's also met the double bill policy that existed in some parts of the country, notably in the Northeast, and also at the very in vogue drive-ins that were here, there, and everywhere. So some of Private Hell's 36 engagements were part of a double bill. In post-war Hollywood filmmaking, in addition to Hollywood classical realism, there were several new styles of picture making, among them film noir, coalescing in 1940 and climaxing 20 years later. It was noir's first embodiment on American screens. From the start, Siegel worked in this style, which infiltrated all types of movies, from musical biographies like Young Man with a Horn in 1949, through female melodramas like Mildred Pierce, 1945, and love stories like Till the End of Time in 1946, to westerns like Outcasts of Poker Flats in 1952. But noir was epicentered in the suspense thriller as here. This was Siegel's favorite turf to explore, the cop or criminal thriller. At the start, noir used an expressionistic palette where stylization held sway. You know, low-key lighting, shadowed frames, canted offbeat angles, visual design that was cluttered, featuring foreground and sidereal obstructions, and to the preference for the diagonal and jagged lines resulting from an unorthodox placing of the actors, the sets, and decor and lighting, and the use of very outre musical scores. Siegel has already drenched this film in this style from its beginnings to the Emerald Bar scene. But by the mid-40s, the noir style also embraced a documentary realism, a style that became in vogue because of the influence of the documentary film and its techniques that went into the making of the inordinate amount of documentary or nonfiction films during World War II. The seminal work in noir's fusion of both expressionism and documentary realism happened at Fox in 1945, with documentary producer Louis de Rochemont and noir director Henry Hathaway's The House on 92nd Street. Why, ingredients of documentary realism are evidenced in the first of two scenes set at the Hollywood racetrack. Location shooting, in which fast stock is used, that is, stock highly sensitive to light, to avoid the use of lighting units, producing at times a grainy image. High-key lighting throughout, in which every area of the frame is lit, where the ratio between light and dark is minimal. The use of actual people associated with the respective location. The absence of musical underlining, and the resorting to the real sounds of the location involved to fill the soundtrack. In documentary realism, the event or process in all of its myriad components go into building the scene. As here in the scene, the entrance to the track, stands full of horse racing devotees, people milling around the track, the race itself, an announcer's voice heralding the race, the sound of the bugle, the bugler himself on the track, the second race, the third race, the $2 window, the $10 window, the $100 window, the placing of bets, the cashing in and counting out of money, the scoreboard, the various refreshment stands, the parking lot lined with cars galore, the lot's exit, and our three detectives moving in and out of the haystack to find a needle. Though Siegel's first noir, the thriller Verdict, was dipped in pure expressionism, he drifted, along with his fellow noir directors Henry Hathaway, Samuel Fuller, Jules Dassin, John Sturges, Otto Preminger, and many others, to a mastery blend of expressionism and documentary realism in one and the same noir film. Notably here, and The Big Steal in 1949, Riot in Cell Block 11, 1954, The Lineup, 1958, Escape from Alcatraz, 1979. Now, this style of documentary realism suited the filmmaker's company Ideology and Pocketbooks as well. After all, realism and cost-saving were part of its agenda. So they had Siegel shoot in and around Los Angeles locations, as here at the Hollywood Park Racetrack in Inglewood, a city adjacent to LA. Interiors of real bars, real shops, real houses were used so actors could walk in and out of real streets within the scene. Recall the cops' arrival at the Emerald Club, parking their car at the curve of a noisy and smoggy boulevard in LA, or Cal's first visit to Lily's hotel, walking down the street and looking for the entrance. Documentary realism was in keeping with a new way of thinking about Hollywood pictures in this post-war period, when the world itself and not the inside of a movie studio became its stage. As previously mentioned, there are two scenes at the racetrack and in between a breather. Lily at work at the Emerald Club and Lily after work in Cal's apartment. Lovely symmetry again. Lupino sang in quite a few of her pictures, so her performing here comes as no surprise. By 1954, Lupino didn't show much of a voice. Here she talks a good bit of the song. But then it isn't much of a song to begin with, in terms of quantity, but also quality, though the song is thematic. I've told my heart I'll never fall in love, or didn't you know? The last line, the actual title of the ditty. The song is credited to John Franco and fills in Lily's history, her indecision about a relationship with Cal, though allowing him some say in her state of mind. The scene in Cal's apartment is intimate, a parallel with the intimate bedroom encounter between Jack and his wife Francie a few scenes ago. That scene occurred at 3:30 in the morning, this 3:15 in the morning. Here again, an example of plot symmetry on Siegel's part. The scene's intimacy is introduced by Lily's high heels strewn on the floor, Lily napping on the daybed, Cal's hair out of place, his shirt clasped at the third button from the top, revealing a triangular part of his hirsute chest. No suit jacket to hold the triangle now. The intimacy continues with Cal giving Lily coffee and then a puff from his cigarette to awaken with. And then he eventually unties her slinky dress's shoulder straps to give her neck a rub. Even more noticeably in the intimacy department is the inordinate amount of medium close-up shots, which the movie now resorts to here, and somewhat in the previous Emerald Bar scene of Lily at the piano keyboard addressing her song to Cal. The question arises, how could it not? Did they make out? Did they go all the way? Are these coded images of getting around censorship that, though beginning to break up at this time in the mid-50s, was still in place? Truth to tell, censors didn't send B films, even these period upgrades of these, through the same rigors that A films were held to, simply because more people attended A's than B's. And secondly, independent producers of B movies, as with the filmmakers' companies, didn't have the money or the time or the concern to submit their work for a production code seal, which for exhibitors at this time was less and less a concern, since they needed product badly, and no concern for the independents as well, since movie screens were plentifully available. The scene in Cal's digs, with its faint shadows on the walls cast by decor, and the continual dialectic of horizontal and vertical figures, is a return to expressionistic noir. The first racetrack scene ran about 6 minutes. The second racetrack scene coming up runs for 2 minutes, a total of 8 minutes. Actually, and perhaps excessively, the racetrack scenes constitute 1/10 of the movie's running time. For both scenes, Siegel is using the suspense thriller technique called the waiting game, as both the characters on the screen and we, the audience, through them, tediously and interminably go round and round and round, looking for one individual among thousands and thousands and thousands. About 6 days go by in all, and psychological time, the way we experience time subjectively while watching a movie, expands, stretches out, seems to lack movement, for shots that compose the two scenes are not that varied. For examples, this second scene at the track begins with an extreme long shot pan down of the entrance. Well, we have seen the shot of the entrance before, though the camera was placed a bit to the right. And there's the overview pan of the parking lot. Characters go through pretty much the same paces again and again and again. The lighting is not varied at all. In short, it's pretty much the same components of the same location. And perhaps we move from the edge of our seats to the back support, maybe even from side to side a bit bored, wondering when and how and if. During the waiting game, Siegel is also doing 4 other things. Siegel is delineating the dull side of being a cop. It's not all excitement, you know. Siegel is deepening Cal's character. Someday I'm going to come out to the track with lots of money, he tells Jack. And Lily's character as well, with that hilariously surreal gloved arm, sporting a knockout bracelet of diamonds, reaching for a mustard jar that makes Lily gawk. A reaction Cal refers to here in the second racetrack scene. And Siegel makes us see how far the Cal-Lily relationship has gone. Back at that refreshment stand, Cal has no qualms about drinking from the same cup as Lily, and Lily no objections. It is a minor detail that says something major. Bingo! An identification is made and the waiting game is over as Siegel launches into another one of those iconic moments from any cop criminal thriller, namely the chase. Each Siegel thriller sports one or perhaps as many as half dozen chases. In Siegel's hands, the chase is usually rendered as here in a montage, a continually mounting or adding of one shot of every short length or duration with another shot of an equally short interval, with another and another and another, adding up to an accumulation to get the audience from one place or point to another in the unfolding of the plot. Here, the plot progresses in terms of alternating shots of the suspect car being chased by the cop's car, each shot running no more than a few seconds. The alternation achieved by a sharp, slamming, direct cut from pursued to pursuer again and again, with a speed that makes us a bit breathless and puts us back on our seat's edge. As we go from the city's racetrack through suburbia to a closed road in the Hollywood Hills till the pursued car goes over a cliff, rolling till it crashes below. Location shooting, except for the several alternating shots of suspect and cops inside the respective cars when process photography is used, contributes greatly to the realism of the scene. So does the use of natural sounds throughout. Underscoring is completely avoided. Natural sounds, that is, the very sounds that emanate from the proceedings on the screen. The sounds of the speeding cars, of screeching tires and brakes as the cars maneuver corners. And, as you just heard, the sound of the crashing of a car going over the cliff. And now the ghoulishly ironic sound of the radio of the smashed car, still broadcasting the race at the track. Except for the cops' faint footfalls and the faint radio, silence pretty much underscores the cops' discovery of the cache. After all the scene's noise, the silence not only conveys a marked change, a very marked change, but an eeriness, thematically right, for things are now going to unravel as never before. Siegel was a whiz at montages, and these passages were ones you'd expect and couldn't wait for when you went to a movie directed by Don Siegel. His expertise didn't come naturally. No, it was taught, involving years of practice. Born in Chicago in 1912, so he's 42 years old here, Siegel had an education that was varied and international. After Cambridge and a stint in Paris, he came back to the States in 1934, California to be exact, looking up his uncle, who was an editor at Warner Brothers. His uncle introduced him to the VP of production there, a man by the name of Hal Wallace, who gave Siegel a job as a studio librarian that consisted in storing and identifying stock footage. You know, footage of a plane taking off in Paris, or footage of an ocean liner being christened in Brooklyn, or footage of a parade of returning soldiers marching down Fifth Avenue. Siegel proved extremely competent and was made an assistant director. From there he moved up the ladder to the insert department. What is the insert department? Well, it's when, for example, Betty Davis boarded a train taking her from San Francisco to Boston. Before you can show Betty's arrival in Boston, you needed a shot or two or many shots of the train crossing the country and insert those shots into the film, hence the insert department. Eventually, Siegel was able to do this in his sleep, so Warner Brothers promoted him to the montage department, where he worked between 1935 and 1944. There he fashioned inventive montages for all types of movies, both B's and A's, notable ones like the gangster film The Roaring Twenties in 1939, or the musical biography Yankee Doodle Dandy in 1942, and the romance adventure Casablanca, Oscared as Best Picture of 1943. His work was remarkable, and by the late 30s, he was also doing second unit direction, which mainly came down to directing action sequences for the studio's most prestigious directors and their A films, like Howard Hawks' The Sergeant York in 1941, Raoul Walsh's Northern Pursuit in 1943, Michael Curtiz's Passage to Marseille, 1944. Incidentally, for his buddy, director Robert Rawson, whom he worked with at Warner's, and actor Broderick Crawford, who appeared in Siegel's second feature, Night Unto Night, in 1949, Siegel, uncredited, did the second unit direction for Columbia's All the King's Men, a multi-Academy Award-winning film of 1949, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor. Throughout a good deal of his time at Warner's, Siegel's mentor was Byron Haskin, head of special effects department, who would become a director of B films later in his career. Siegel religiously followed two of Haskin's commandments. First rule, no matter how much the audience may be bored by an action, never leave any doubt about what you are trying to say. Cal's short drop-in at the Emerald Bar and Lily's snatch of a song, followed by the intimate scene in his apartment, are fine examples of this. And the second rule, when you promise that something is going to happen, be sure that it happens. The Hollywood racetrack scene followed by the chase fit this dictum to a T. Before Siegel graduated to directing features at Warner's, he had to prove himself, and he did. For documentary producer Louis de Richemont, he made two shorts, one called Stars in the Night, a modern version of The Birth of Christ. An odd subject for Siegel in that he was born to Jewish people, his father an agnostic, his mother a Reformed Jew, while he himself became an atheist. The second documentary short was an anti-Nazi track called Hitler Lives. Stars in the Night won an Academy Award that year for the Best Documentary Short. Note the beginning of the next scene. Another telling detail. Cal looking back behind him at the road, worried if someone is following, and undoubtedly feeling guilt. Part of Siegel's style is to open a scene on a very memorable, salient, and thematic detail. Recall these openers of the past scenes. The mad dash to the car to nab the suspect. Lily's high heels on the carpet. Cal's wink at Lily at the piano bar. An exciting horse race upon which Lily perversely turns her back. The captain nervously playing with his pipe before dealing with Lily's participation or not in the investigation. Cal checking his little black book for Lily's address. The start of the investigation at the Emerald Club. In the wee hours, Jack coming upon his awakened, worried wife smoking a cigarette in bed. A pharmacist's testimony about a $50 bill. Cal railing over his torn jacket. A phone ringing on the desk of the robbery division at police headquarters. A falling cutout in a pharmacy window. Descending a city's skyscrapers in the black night. Notice in this trailer park scene and subsequent ones, Siegel has reverted back to expressionism. The murder and the robbery have been solved about 47 minutes into the movie. But wait, there are still 34 minutes to go, and all is not tied up. In fact, the plot is all unraveling again, this time in a more personal and involving way, affecting each of the lives of the detective protagonists, their women, their jobs, their very hearts, minds, and spirits, as Siegel now continues the suspense and the thrills, delving into the psychology of his protagonists, whom we have come to hang out with, identify with, care about, and most dangerous of all, come to like. Needless to say, the film's enigmatic and, I might add, suspenseful title, Private Hell 36, along with the murder and robbery, have been cleaned up. From this point on, the concentration on Jack and Cal's psyches is relentlessly pure. At the Monday night dinner party with guests Cal and Lily at Jack and Fran's suburban home, it is anything but pleasant. Jack's destabilization is heartbreaking. From the very beginning, he drinks too much, ignoring Fran's response. Here, that memorable, salient, and thematic opener from Siegel once again. Clumsily, Jack kicks out the leg of an end table in front of the sofa, refusing Cal's help. But they've always worked in tandem, but not now, and not here. In fact, he yells at Cal's offer to help, not once but twice. Take note, Jack has never shown clumsiness before. His hair is disheveled. His clothes hang on him. He busies himself continually, obsessively, with mixing and serving drinks, ignoring for the most part his wife and his guests. He doesn't want the baby brought into the room, as if she would be contaminated, ignoring the wishes of his wife and the guest Lily. One just doesn't ignore the wishes of a guest in your own home, but Jack does. This is rudeness, and Jack is not a rude man. When the ladies leave the room to see the baby, Jack has nothing to say to Cal, if looks can kill. Before this, whenever the guys were together, there was a constant back and forth between them. The doorbell rings. Later in the scene, the phone will ring twice. Each of the 3 rings, Jack's face becomes immobile. The delivery boy's adoration of Jack as a cop who has had his picture taken for the newspaper for apprehending a thief only salts the sores. It is the last thing he wants to hear. Upon re-entering the room, Jack finally begins to confront Cal. He is full of disgust, telling Cal he can't look at himself or his baby in the mirror without gagging. Pretty strong words, these, from a guy who doesn't exaggerate. As the scene unfolds, so do other instances of distress on Jack's part that mark a change in him. For example, please notice when Lily re-enters the room and the telephone rings for the first time, and even Cal remains still, while Jack plods in from the kitchen and seems to freeze on the phone. Lily's joke about Jack's jumpiness, "Are you running a bookie joint on the side?" gets a snarky retort from him. No, that's too legitimate. Jack's sardonic sense of humor has turned morosely bitter. That's a change. Notice also, throughout the scene, Jack continually smokes and drinks. It's nonstop. At dinner on the patio, Jack doesn't touch a thing. On the patio, he points out to Cal the absurdity of it all. Jack's sense of humor again. He can't believe he planted not flowers, but keys to the trailer in the flower bed, a situation he likens to a cheap murder mystery. Making no bones about it, Jack tells Cal he wants him to lead. Here again, the rudeness. And Jack is not a rude man. Yes, Cal has turned rogue. And Jack, who has bonded with his work partner Cal and has become Cal's friend, a friend whom he invites to his home for dinner, is shocked and stymied, and has been ineffectual thus far in deterring Cal. But Jack has always led the way that Cal has always followed, but not now. But Jack has always given advice that Cal has always followed, but not now. Ratting Cal out seems not an option for Jack. Buddies just don't do that. Isn't buddy betrayal worse than police unit betrayal? And if he did betray Cal, would Cal retaliate? How? Would Francie be affected in any way? And if Jack did confess, time has passed. Too much time has passed. And therefore, how much would he be blamed for not turning in the dough when it was found? Truth to tell, in Jack's mind, his poor pay prevents him from acquiring nice things for his family. This gnaws at him. We have seen this from the beginning. Recall the locker and bedroom scenes where he mentioned this. In the very last scene, on the drive from the trailer, Cal even brought this up again, and he seemed to acquiesce. Yes, both cops, each in his own way, have begun an excruciatingly and demoralizing long day's journey into night. In post-war Hollywood, the cop eclipsed the private eye, taking on his traits. And as never before, the slate was frequented by transgressive cops. This too was part of the new realism of Hollywood pictures at this time. The transgressive cop came in all shapes and sizes. The cop could be transgressive in relationship to the female suspect, falling in lust with her, as in Pushover, 1954. He could be transgressive in terms of his penchant for violence. Take a look at On Dangerous Ground, 1952, with Lupino as a blind woman. Transgressive in going against his superiors, as in Naked Alibi, 1954. Many films portrayed the cop as psychologically unhinged, owing to childhood trauma, as in Detective Story, 1950, or some past guilt, as in Out of the Past, 1948. Or greed can be his downfall, as here. This was Siegel's most trespassed territory because it occasioned the most complex characterization from him. At scenes closed, Jack becomes aggressive. He's never shown this before. And with, of all people, his wife. He grabs her shoulder, the pressure of which she notes. Then there is that third ring, the telephone again, that makes him instantly look from Francine to the phone. It is from the captain, odd, strange, perplexing. A late Monday evening call for a meeting the very next morning. Something unnerving about it all. Worst of all, at the very end of the scene, when Francie asks what is going on and offers to help in any way she can, Jack can't bring himself to speak. At this moment, Siegel uses his most intense close-ups thus far, for both him and for her, in which their lips attempt to form words, but no sound comes out. Jack can no longer face Francie. He turns and closes the door upon her, a gesture years before gangster Al Pacino closed the door on wife Diane Keaton in The Godfather, 1972. This inability to communicate, to trust, to confess to another, no matter how close, is a problem often evidenced in Siegel's cops. Check out Siegel's loaded opener in the scene of Cal driving Lily home, as Lily remarks, "Nice people, Jack and Francie, not getting along. Maybe they're having a little trouble in the dough department." Though she may not know it, Lily helps Cal, relieving his anxiety somewhat by concentrating upon money. As the last scene focused on Jack, this scene is given over to Cal's frame of mind, his malaise. It's rationalization all the way for sly Cal. "You don't want to be a cop's wife," he tells, not asks her. "We want the best, and we're going to have it." Obviously, sharing the guilt is more relieving than carrying the burden himself. Then Lily drops a bomb. A move to Las Vegas, motivated by lots of dough floating around. Again, money talk. Money, too, makes Lily tick. Her announcement and its reason why make Cal swerve the car and come to a dead stop roadside. His fury is banked for a while. Part of the reason for his stealth will be leaving him for Vegas. Now he will have to shoulder the blame himself. He insults her royally. "Who's going to stake you?" insinuating her loose morals. Worse still, he underscores her minuscule talent. "Of course, you'll be a smash with that voice of yours." His fury spills over. He slaps her face, grasps her shoulder, then later clutches her throat. And another side of Cal is again confirmed. He's mean and violent. Remember his merciless pummeling of the suspect on the sidewalk at the drugstore? Siegel's men are known for manhandling their women. Since Lee shares the scene, this is a good place to say something about Siegel's women, who crop up in his films. Excepting the beguile, the female is found either close to center or off center, rather than dead center. 3 types of females inhabit his canvas. The first is the independent, shady, morally frisky, acridly witty, world-weary type. Lily fits the bill, though she did consent to assist in the investigation and at the finale softens her stance. Prototypically, it's Angie Dickinson in The Killers. The second female type is the faithful, honest, decent woman, Francie here, or Teresa Wright in Count the Hours. The third type is a combination. Check out Jane Greer in The Big Steal or Dana Winter in Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Married men, as with Jack here, are infrequent. Most Siegel men are seen in a problematic relationship with a woman, as with Cal. Often it is the wrong woman for them. Is Lily the right woman for Cal? She's likable and her sassiness amuses, but money is a big thing in her life, and it has aggravated Cal's cupidity, and in a cockeyed sense has helped motivate and rationalize, in his eyes, his own theft. In the next 3 scenes, 2 in the captain's office and 1 locker room interlude, the suspense accelerates and the mystery enters another phase, with no fingerprints found on the suspect's suitcase, with a large sum of the stolen money still missing, and later, with a set of clothes that didn't fit the suspect, who was Jack's size. The captain concludes there must have been an accomplice. The conclusion takes a further psychological toll on the buddy cops. In the first scene here, Jack's head stays bent some of the time. Cal chews gum continually and often answers for Jack, while constantly keeping his eyes on Jack. In the locker room scene that follows, Jack raises his voice and lunges at a policeman when he makes a harmless joke about the discovered loot. Again, Jack acting out of character. Time is always a consideration in Siegel's movies. Time hangs heavily over his people. And the problem of time running down is something that both the lawman and the criminal must contend with. Sometimes this consideration can be there at the top of the movie. In other words, some Siegel films start with a bang and never let up. And what follows is a race against time running down, a race against being too late to destroy or change the situation. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Lineup, Madigan, Dirty Harry come to mind. Other Siegel movies take their time. Little by little, they head for and eventually reach an explosion or end time. Private Hell 36 is intriguing because though it starts with a bang, the murder and robbery, the race to solve these awful crimes does not eventuate. In fact, time has run down. The scene switches a year later and another locale. And there is a breather. But hold on, a little time later, a marked $50 bill from the stolen loot turns up, and the clock has started ticking and time begins to run down. It is now a matter of time. But hey, midway through the film, the clock stops, for the perpetrator of the crime with the stolen money is found. But what's this? The clock has started ticking once again, and time is running down again, as Cal, with Jack by his side, steal some of the loot, hide it, and worst of all, live with the misdeed. It becomes a race on Jack's part to keep his buddy from turning rotten. And with the new pressures piling up in the captain's office, no fingerprints, why? Missing cash, why? An accomplice, who? The time for the buddy cops races even more. And on Cal's part, there is also the race to abscond with his share of the money as quickly as possible. In Siegel's canvas, the mail comes with an intriguing built-in set of contradictions. The lawman is at once heroic and anti-heroic. On the other side of the coin, the criminal is of course villainous, but has notably admirable traits. He displays physical strength, he's a hustler, he has the smarts, he's shrewd, he's bright enough to avoid the curveballs, he's funny. No villain as such in this film, but with the cops, well, Jack can't and won't definitively say no to Cal's theft. Something is stopping him. Why does he allow Cal to carry on so? While with Cal, his venality trumps his heroism. Greed and lust, lying and cheating, reversals, treachery and betrayals, and crimes of all sorts are daily occurrences met and suffered, as well as inflicted and caused by Siegel's cops and criminals. As hitman Julian comments to his hostage in the lineup, crime is aggressive, so is the law. Siegel's films are noted for their violence. The riot in Cell Block 11, line-up silent murder in the steam bath, the sword that splits a face in half during the bombing of the French garrison in Two Mules for Sister Sarah, the amputation in The Beguiled. Recall this film's many instances of violence thus far. And coming up, there will be a shootout and another killing. Film after film, Siegel gives us a world that is awry from the start, a world that becomes more and more unhinged as it unfolds. And this is felt by his people, who in the end are unable, or perhaps for a time, stem the tide. His people don't like the world they find themselves in. They might do something about it, but in the end there is really nothing they can do. It is what it is. They might have a moment of triumph, but it is just that, a moment. Recall Detective Dirty Harry's finale. He hurls the badge away, for he knows there will be more serial killers and more red tape. Here, too, at the very top of this scene, there is Siegel's inevitably charged, meaningful, and telling bit, money talk, albeit it is talk about a trivial $20 bucks that Lily makes Cal cough up, owed to her from a card game. But the scene's heartbeat, however, is a phone call that makes time run down faster than ever before. It is the orchestral jazz from the radio in the room, however, that is the primary actor in the scene, a sound correlative of the effect of that call on Cal's mind, emotions, and nerves as he lies to Lily and hustles her out. The radio music is a roller coaster of climbing and falling, ups and downs, motion and stillness, starting and breaking and repeating, going here and there, nowhere really, all very indefinite, all scattered, very impossible to pin down, jagged, edgy, uncomfortable. Credited with the score is Leith Stevens, a child protege, who worked in radio during the 30s. Throughout World War II, he became the radio director of the entire Southwest Pacific area. His piano concerto for Night Song in 1948 was his movie calling card. He worked cheap and was allied with the Lupino Young production company, having already finished for them Beware My Lovely in 1952 and The Hitchhiker and The Bigamist, both 1953. The filmmakers group and Siegel were very fortunate to hire Burnett Guffey as their director of photography. Starting out as a camera assistant on John Ford's The Iron Horse way back in 1924, Guffey graduated to camera operator in 1927 and finally a cameraman, signing on with Columbia Pictures in 1944, where his expressionistic noir work met with notable acclaim. So Dark the Night, 1946, The Reckless Moment, 1949, Human Desire, 1954, for starters, among many, many other films. For his black and white Hawaiian location shooting for Columbia's From Here to Eternity in 1953, he won his first Academy Award. His blending of expressionism and documentary realism in one and the same picture is noteworthy. For his expressionism had a reality to it, as here, with Cal in the phone booth and later waiting for Jack to arrive in the night, while his documentary realism has aspects of terror and strangeness to it, as with Francie's worried look in the overlit medium shot, answering Cal's call about Jack's whereabouts. Guffey will win a second Oscar for his landmark Bonnie and Clyde in 1967, which heralded one of the most innovative looks of any American film then and now, a film that showed Hollywood, among so many other things, how to render nostalgia on the screen. One of the reasons Lupino and Young chose Siegel to direct is because Siegel brought in his B's at budget level, sometimes even under the budget. One way Siegel did this was to shoot the minimum and cut in the camera. In other words, what he shot during the production, a shot's beginning and its end, invariably stayed in the finished film. If the film needed slight trims to make it crispier, punchier, then that seems to be the primary function of editor Stanford Tichler, who started in pictures the year before his work here. To make his pictures unfold even faster, Siegel skirted elaborate talk of motivations and didn't even iron out complexities of plot. skirting explanations and leaving the audiences to fill in. This was dictated, but only in part, by the bargain basement level of production in the first part of his career. For examples in this film, why couldn't Jack's decision over the stolen loot prevail? Or take the previous scene, still in our mind's eye. Where did Jack drive in his car till 2 a.m., as he claimed to Cal? And why exactly? Who had been trailing him in the car for 2 days? He's a cop. And as a cop, isn't he trained in finding out who would or could be trailing him? Maybe there could have been some time given over to this trailing itself. As for the finale and the other supposed trail, why wouldn't Jack and Cal have noticed and recognized the trail? This one on their way to the trailer. If one cop wouldn't, the other would. Wouldn't you think? Also, wouldn't Cal and later Jack have any glimmer of recognition of the voice of the supposed accomplice? Also, at the trailer, did the captain hear enough of what was going on between the cops to sweep the case under the rug as far as Jack was concerned? Where was the captain and assistant standing in relationship to Jack and Cal during the cops' discussion? At the trailer, the captain tells his assistant, pick up all that money that Farnham found. Can the captain get away with this fudging? Will the assistant go along with it? Despite this niggling, the film works well, indeed, and moves agilely. This scene in Lily's apartment is, of course, pivotal in giving the typically hard-boiled Siegel woman some dimension, as Lily, in her nightgown, trails after Cal in the hotel corridor. It is Lily's finest moment, even finer than her aiding the investigation, as she confesses, I've changed my mind. I'm kind of used to having you around. I didn't want to lose that. Maybe we don't need these things. With this gesture, Siegel makes us side with Lily completely, and we have to readjust our judgment and perspective on her. It's actually the employment of the technique of surprise on Siegel's part, and surprise is part and parcel of suspense thrillers. Surprises are meant to startle an audience. Of course, Lily's surprise in this romantic interlude set, ironically, in a hotel lobby, sets the suspense in motion once again. Which way will Cal go? Will Cal acquiesce and come to his senses and not go through with the crime? Here is the counterpart of the moment of truth scene between Jack and Francine in their home after the party, this time with Cal and Lily. And the counterpart scene carries over with it almost the same extreme close-up shot architecture that was given over to Jack and Francie. Though Jack and Francie each were mostly given a single shot, Cal and Lily were given a two-shot. Again, Siegel's love for symmetry, thematically and formally as well. A strikingly expressionistic and, as expected, thematic opening shot at Russo's, full of frame opposition and splintering, as horizontal lines vie with vertical ones, as Cal's car pulls up curbside, seen through the entrance door's windows. And the opposition and splintering continue in the scene, as with the camera placed behind the counter waitress, taking an order from Jack and Cal on the other side, seen against an awry horizontal, split bamboo, rolled down window shade with a diagonal tie-up. Thematic, of course, for this is where the buddies stand in their relationship, fragmented and at odds. Cal's despicableness is increased, not because of his unyielding larcenous bent, we've come to expect that, but because of his once-over of the blonde customer's figure that stops his pivotal talk with Jack. What must weigh and should weigh heavily on his mind, the theft and his insistence Jack be part of it, and let us not forget his supposed love for Lily. These considerations would seem to preclude such a reaction to the passing blonde. But no, Cal is still on the prowl. His reaction bothers us. It should, making us wonder, how concerned is he with what he is putting Jack through? How deep is his love for Lily? In his canon, save possibly 2 or 3 features, Siegel just about devoted himself to the suspense thriller genre. Even his westerns, war films, sci-fi, and horror movies, suspense thriller elements constituted their innards. And so the genre became a succinct and near-perfect vehicle to express his downbeat, cynical, and according to him, realistic view of life. For the genre paints a world gone awry, a fragmented world, a world coming apart, a world in crisis mode. In the genre, a single individual, or maybe a buddy team, which is a favorite Siegel ploy, or even a group of people, as Invasion of the Body Snatchers or The Beguiled, come upon a crisis, expectantly or by chance, take it on, a decision that exerts or exacts all of their potential, wits and brains, emotions, and physical expansive energy. As often as not, Siegel turns the paradigm inside out, spotlighting those who instigate and continually perpetuate the crisis. In Private Hell 36, we have both instances. In the movie's first half, buddy cops come upon the crisis and have it dropped in their laps and overcome it, while in the second half, these buddy cops initiate another crisis. In a thriller, the crisis can be political, economic, sociological, moral, and psychological, but whatever it is an instance of chaos. Termination can be final, indefinite, or in the end, unattainable. In Siegel's movies, the finales are rarely clean or happy. Usually they don't have the element of finish about them. His works end on a problematic note, as here. If solution has been reached, as in this film, the memory of the suffering, physical and mental, all along the way, burn in the brain. Jack and Francie's anguish, the death of a buddy, a friend, the loss of a chance at love for Lily. Siegel is a pessimist. As such, he contributed saliently to the darkening and realism of the Hollywood movie that took off after World War II. Very few, if any, happy people inhabit thrillers, but preoccupied, worried, anxious, obsessed, scared, battered, bruised, ruthless, violent people do. Has Jack ever cracked a smile throughout the movie? And if Jack displays a humorous side, as he does in the film's beginning, it is a darkly cynical brand of humor. As for Cal, the brightest he can be is lightly dismissive of barbs flying his way. Despite the lack of clarity in the final scene, as already mentioned, the ending remains effective. The suspense starts up again, and there is a surprise on the way, something we didn't expect. The film's closing shot is symmetrical with the film's opening shot. Siegel is a sucker for symmetry. In the opening shot, remember, we went from the above to the below, whereas in the movie's close, we go from the below to the above. The disembodied voiceover, both performed by Dean Jagger, is repeated. At the start, the voiceover brought us into the film, laying out what was happening. At the end, the voice provides our way out of the film, offering us some kind of perspective, evaluation, a summary of sorts. Not too many moviegoers know the work of Don Siegel, especially his B films. If they know the name of some of his very popular A films, they have rarely, if ever, pinned the director's name to them. Hopefully, by turning in on this commentary, but more especially by enjoying this neat, dimensioned, well-written and acted and immaculately directed, unpretentious thriller, you want to know more about Siegel and his work. Oh yes, one last thing. The conceit of misspelling the indie production company filmmakers with only one M at the film's start is repeated at film's end. Symmetry again. And two, the conceit is continued with the Made in Hollywood title, with the word Hollywood missing its Y. And why ever not? What a breathtaking trip this was. Thank you for taking the ride along with me.